I'm a scholar of social movements and social change. I care about questions like, how do old ideas go away and get replaced by new ones? How do the powerful lose control? How do new technologies alter the balance of power in favor of the people? So maybe that's why my story tonight starts on the streets in the middle of a protest in Budapest. I was living there as a faculty member at a university focused on how open societies can make the world a better place. By open societies, I mean vibrant and tolerant democracies whose governments are accountable to the people. That's what I care about, empowered people and accountable authorities. So I was at this event as a social movement scholar, as an observer, but I was also there as a participant. People had turned out, we had all turned out, in order to protest a new tax policy that the Hungarian government had proposed, $1 per gigabyte for everyone. And this is something that hurt the young and the old, it hurt anarchists and capitalists, it hurt the rich and the poor and individuals and businesses. It hurt everybody, and everybody had turned out onto the streets. Now in Budapest, protests are usually small affairs. There's lots of worthy causes, but not the sort of turnout that you'd expect to get the government's attention. I know this because at the time, I was running an innovative human rights lab focused on using new technology to estimate the size of crowds. Now, how many people turn out at events is important. If nobody turns out at an event, it's likely that the event or the person or the policy in question just doesn't have broad support. So an important question, though, is if turnout matters, how many people turn out? I'm curious about this. I'm a social movement scholar. So I started a human rights lab, and our job was to figure out how many people show up at events. We did this using a new technology. We did this using drones. Not a fancy drone, not a predator drone, a basic drone. The kind that packs the brains of a smartphone and the stability of a helicopter into like the price point of a laptop. Over the last 5 years, these have exploded in popularity. So if you've seen one somewhere and have been annoyed by one somewhere, it was something like this. This is what we use in Budapest. This same platform with our research there. Here, my students build drones like this over a series of afternoons for about $200 in parts that we order online. So this is the general type of platform that we were using to document the size of crowds. Now, in Budapest, up until the protest I'm telling you about right now, all of the events we'd been to were small. A few dozen people here, a few hundred there. Lots of worthy causes, but not a lot of turnout. So it was late one night when I got a call from local activists, because I like to think I'm on their speed dial. They called me. They said, there's going to be a protest, and it's going to be huge. So I grabbed the drone. I grabbed my top graduate student, and we swung into action. And right away, we emerged from the subway and into the kind of energy and enthusiasm that we've all experienced in crowds of like-minded people. Whether it's music or sports, whether it's concerts or political events, there's a solidarity that's thrilling when we get together with crowds and groups of like-minded people. The protests are no different. There's a solidarity that's thrilling, even in protests, maybe especially in protests. So since I'd been to so many other protests, I scanned the crowd, and I could see familiar faces. The familiar faces were there from other events, but there were faces in the crowd. There were individuals and a mass of folks who looked like everybody had turned out. Now, the next day, the government responded. They said the turnout was small, and they said they checked and saw it was the same old cranks and anarchists, and they were at it again. But they were wrong. And we could prove it. We could prove it because we had been using this device to capture footage, right? And what our footage demonstrated was hundreds of people in crowds of thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of people holding their phones up. These are the devices the government was proposing taxing, right? Holding their phones up in an act of solidarity and resistance toward the drone, right? I'm old enough, some of you are old enough, you may remember the analog version of this. Same thing, same thing. So these lit phones told the government, and actually told the world, what people on the street already knew. It wasn't cranks and anarchists. It was everyone. Now, when it comes to estimating crowd sizes, governments do what the Hungarian government did. They lowball. And social movements do what social movements do. They say everybody turned out. They aim for the stars. But the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. And the truth matters. And here's why. New social science has demonstrated that when about 5% of a population turns out in nonviolent protest, the people win. So we ran with this footage back to the lab, we crunched the numbers, and about 4.5% of the population had turned out. So about a week later, the government dropped the tax policy, the movement declared a victory, and I think the world was a better place. So I'm telling you this story for two reasons. The first is that drones can help us see the world from a new perspective. And the second is that drones can help hold the powerful to account. Now, holding the powerful to account, I like the sound of that. I'm a social movement scholar. Holding the powerful to account sounds promising, but with new technology, there's also significant peril. The French philosopher Paul Virilio once said that inside every invention is its accident. He said the invention of the automobile is actually also the invention of the car crash. We can think of the internet, right? Which is an amazing thing. We've gone in 3 short decades from the information superhighway. I remember this, some of you do. The information superhighway, and here we are now with the dark web, where you can trade in guns, weapons, and people with impunity. The internet was sold as having boundless promise, and in a lot of ways, it has way more promise than we ever anticipated. Virtually all of us right now have in this room, in our pockets, a mobile banking platform, easy management of our money, maps for easy location services, social spaces for sharing our lives, and critical cat videos with others. Boundless promise. But the internet's also facilitated the access that creeps and criminals have to our lives and our data, right? So for every bank, there's a hacked account, and for every map, there's your tracked location, and for every social media space, there's a hijacked political debate. Drones are having the same moment. Drones increase the tools that creeps and criminals have to spy and to steal. Drones increase the tools that the powerful, or anyone really, has to violate rights, violate our privacy. All over this country, actually all over the world, the police are scrambling to buy drones that could have followed you here to this event if you'd run a red light. So is that how drones are getting used? We have 2 competing hypotheses here, right? Is that they're empowering people or they're invading our privacy? I don't know the answer, so we went back to the lab and tried to sort this out. We gathered a bunch of data on drone use ever since these smaller drones have been available. We looked at 15,000 cases of drone use, 15,000 cases. We just said, well, what are people doing with them? And this is what people are doing. Lots and lots of pro-social things. Search and rescue, science, innovation, new businesses. The thing that surprised me was the 2 trends that were the smallest to see, the hardest to find, and I had to put an arrow up there so you could see them. That's the use of drones for spying, for surveillance, and for crime. Antisocial uses are the smallest bits of data we could find in this worldwide survey covering 6 years. So I'm arguing that new technology increases the tools that people have to do things people do. Increases the tools criminals have to do crime. Most of us aren't criminals. So it turns out that this technology, like all technologies, also increases our ability to care for others. We can imagine flying defibrillators. You can press a button and one can find you and help save your life. Anti-poaching drones, which increase the capacity, scale, and scope of conservationists in protecting endangered species. Or the use of drones as in our work on estimating crowd size to help hold the powerful to account, amplify the voice of the people, make the world a better place. So what are some of the implications here? One of the implications And one of the things we need to start wrestling with and thinking about is that drones allow us to hack space. With the internet, one of the things that we got so excited about was its ability to allow us to hack the world of data in bits and bytes. But with drones, and here's the really crazy thing, with drones, the hacking is of the space we're in. Drones hack the world of atoms. Drones and other robots are perhaps the next species of the internet when it emerges from the cloud and onto dry land for the first time. Maybe it does so in the form of our own devices. Drones and other robots are perhaps the next species of the internet, or of algorithms, or of artificial intelligence. So what does this mean? I mean, for us, what does this mean? Well, for starters, it means we have new things in the sky. Where will these things fly? Not my drone, my one drone, or my team's, or my students' half-dozen drones, but 1 million delivery drones. Will they block our sunsets? Will they fly over our backyards? We don't have language or metaphor for these things. We need new metaphors. We need to start imagining things like solid flows of traffic, solid streams of traffic like in coordinated flows, or murmurs of starlings in coordinated flight. These are the sorts of new metaphors we're going to need to wrestle with in thinking about having new stuff in our sky. But where will they fly? Over our backyards? Will they block our sunsets? Will they have sensors and cameras? Where will that data go? Drones also mean new things for the ground. Walls, terrace gardens, backyards, penthouses were all designed with a horizontal view in mind. But drones upend centuries of theory and practice in architecture, urban planning, artistic expression. Graffiti is something that as a species we've been doing for millennia. And our graffiti for all that time has been on walls that we can reach and see. But what happened to our graffiti when we can reach and see new places? Graffiti drones aren't limited by the length of our arms. And graffiti drones aren't limited by the height of our ladders. Now, clearly, we're in the very beginning of this as an art form. But let that sink in. Drone graffiti is in its early stages as an art form. Drones also mean new things for our laws. Not only laws about safety and privacy, but also basic enforcement, basic accountability. Our laws are organized around systems of accountability that drones evade and confound by design. Remember, my students build drones without anyone's knowledge or permission. They could, if they wanted to, fly them beyond anybody's control with no accountability. So drones mean new things for the air, for the ground. They mean new things for our laws. They also challenge what we think of as normal. We're going to need to develop new ideas about what's normal in order to cope with the future. If regulation is hard, we need new norms. Most people, want to be accepted. We find ways of either developing or adopting or adhering to new social norms. So what sort of new normal do we want to create in this world? What sort of values will we ask our laws to enforce? What sort of people will we assume users to be? These are tricky questions, and they're going to need to get answered. So what do we do when new technology has promise and peril? And what do we do when new technology makes old laws hard to enforce? Well, the first thing we're going to need is new laws. And I'd like to argue to you all that those new laws have to take into account the values of open society. They have to take seriously the better angels of our natures as human beings. And the reason for this is that governments and corporations can't be the only actors at the table when we negotiate the new rules and new laws that will govern this new world. People, we the people, residents and citizens, we must be at the table to ensure that new laws respect the greater good, that they're built to empower people. They're built in ways that can also hold authorities to account. We will need new laws. But in a lot of ways, this technology pushes the puzzle beyond the realm of laws and into an additional realm. The sort of massive coordinated flows of drones that I'm describing earlier, a sort of architecture and arteries of infrastructural flying objects, managing those sorts of flows and avoiding collision will not be possible with individual humans or groups of humans or institutions. We're going to need help. And for help, we're going to turn to artificial intelligence. So while I'm saying to you that our laws should look to the better angels of our natures as human beings and embed the values of open society, a really great question, I think, is, does artificial intelligence have a better angel of its nature? That's a challenge for us, because after all, at the end of the day, we're going to be the ones programming the machines, we're going to be the ones programming the algorithms, we're going to be the ones programming the artificial intelligence. So the challenge is for us, at the end of the day, as we embark in a new era, can we program into these systems our better selves and our better angels? Thank you.